Good afternoon and welcome to today's virtual Cabinet meeting. Before we start the formal business of the meeting, I must remind you that the audio of this meeting is being live broadcast on the Council's website and the video of the meeting will be published after. I'd like to introduce the officers supporting today's meeting. The councillors will be introduced shortly. We've got Mike Hill, Chief Executive, Mike Avery, Assistant Director for Planning and Regeneration, Alison Ball, Assistant Director Finance, and Helen Barrington, Director of Organisational Development and Democratic Services, and finally Dave Waitlin, Director of Health and Community Wellbeing, and I'm Alec Dudley, Democratic Services Manager and the Clerk.
Thanks, Alec. We're still in COVID land, as everybody can see, so we'll move quickly on with apologies for absence. And I've got Michael down for is leaving after 15 minutes because of other council business with the LGA. Anyone else? No one else.
No other apologies, Chair, but just to confirm, councillors present for people at home, we've got Councillor Clark, Councillor Payne, Councillor Barnes, Councillor Ellis, Councillor Gregory, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor McCrossan and Councillor Wheeler.
Brilliant, thank you. So moving on to item 2, we've got to approve as a correct record that's on pages 5 to 9 of the meeting held on the 6th of August 2020. So I'll move those if somebody could second them.
Yeah, second.
Yeah, we're agreed. Declarations of interest. Thank you. Item 4, which is 106, and this is Assistant Director of Finance, which is Alison. That's on page 11 to 18. 106 contributions for 2019/20. Thanks, Alison.
Right, thank you, Leader. Yes, this report presents the annual update on the Council's Section 106 contributions, which are secured through the planning process for infrastructure investments, for example, for open space, healthcare and affordable housing provision. The annual report details the activity during 2019/20, including what the money has been spent on, the contributions that were still held at the end of the financial year, and the contributions that are agreed but not yet receivable. And the table at paragraph 2.1.1 shows the projects that Section 106 contributions have funded during 2019/20, totalling £358,000. Including the use of healthcare monies for an extension at Westdale Lane Surgery, a project that was actually delivered by the CCG, and 2 of our own projects, including Gedling Country Park viewing platforms and seating area, and affordable housing provision at the Burton Road development. Capital contributions that are still held at the year end total just over £1.8 million, as detailed in the table on page 13. This includes over £600,000 of healthcare contributions for projects that will be delivered by the CCG, and our development control team are in liaison with the CCG to ensure the development of future projects in that area. As you're aware, Section 106 agreements usually have a clause stating the time frame in which contributions need to be spent. And you can see from the last column in that table that we don't have any which have exceeded the time frame, and future projects will be developed to ensure that we don't have to repay anything to developers in the future. The capital programme for 2021 does include the use of £170,000 of those available contributions, including Burton Road affordable housing, that's just finishing off of that scheme, completion of the seating area at Gedling Country Park, and investment in the Lamley Lane changing rooms. Additional affordable housing projects are also in development but are not yet part of the approved programme. Section 106 agreements sometimes include revenue contributions for maintenance, and these are detailed in paragraph 2.1.3 and are in the main for open space provision. These are drawn down to pay for maintenance costs, with £28,000 being used during last financial year. The contribution in respect of Park Road Bestwood is actually a healthcare provision, and this has been delayed in delivery due to the separation of the parish councils, but there are things now in place for that to be progressed during 2021. The contributions that have been agreed but not yet received from developers total £2.3 million, as detailed in the table on page 16. And just one final point for noting, from this year, all local planning authorities that have received developer contributions from both either SIL or Section 106 must publish an annual infrastructure funding statement by the 31st of December each year, and this is currently being prepared by for 1920 by Mike Avery's team, so will be available in the near future. That was all I wanted to go through today, leaders. But the recommendations are there to note the report on page 11.
Thanks, Alison. Any comments from anybody? Okay, I can just see Jenny. Yeah, Jenny.
So mute.
You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. There might be a typo on page 16. It does say Langley Lane. I assume Lamley Lane.
Probably Lamley Lane.
Yeah. Page 14 under the contributions for maintenance, Burton Road, Gedling. Could you remind me what's that's the maintenance of?
I haven't got the specific details of the site with me, Jenny, for each individual scheme, but I can certainly come back to you on that.
Thank you. And just one final question. About 2 years ago, we asked as a cabinet for information from the county council on what Section 106 monies they were holding. I don't remember, perhaps it slipped my memory, but I don't remember that we ever got anything back. Because surely if we have to publish what we're holding and what we've received, don't the county council have to do the same?
They certainly will have to publish it from this year. That's now a requirement. I think we did write to the county council after the meeting last year, but I'm not aware of what the response was. But I can see Mike's put his hand up, so perhaps he wants to come in on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm, Jenny, we did actually, I wrote and I did get an answer and I circulated it to members, but you're right, it was about 2 years ago and we probably ought to do that again in fairness. So I'll talk to Alison about doing that again. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? See any more hands? No? So are we agreed to note? Agreed, thank you. Moving on to item 5, is it? Where are we? Consultation on public spaces protection order for dog fouling. So this will be you, Dave, will it?
Yes, thank you, Leader, and good afternoon, colleagues. Yeah, I can introduce this report, and thanks to Kevin Nealon and colleagues in legal for advising on this. It's a report, Leader, that seeks permission and authorisation to go out to formal consultation on the implementation of a public space protection order for dog fouling. The recommendations are covered on page 19. I'll perhaps come to those at the end, but they are in essence around setting the scheme up post consultation, if that's where we end up as a council. In terms of background, I mean, many of you will receive complaints and have been involved actively in members helping public protection manage this issue. Dog fouling at the moment is managed under legislation that's covered off in the top appendix, at paragraph 1.1 by way of fixed penalty, and that's for an amount of £50. That then has the recourse to court if that's not paid. Traditionally, it's never easy for our wardens to catch people in the act of not cleaning up after their dogs. We do try particularly hard to do so, and when we do, we publicise those cases. And indeed, have had some success recently in Gedling Country Park. It's still subject to numerous complaints throughout the year, and they're highlighted in the report. And indeed, as a public health issue, it's something that the council, I know you have as members, have always encouraged us to maintain our enforcement activity, and that we do. It's always typically difficult to gather evidence, and our wardens do plainclothes patrols. We encourage the public to report things, and indeed the recent prosecution was with support of camera footage taken by a member of the public. So we know the public support this, and we know from places like the country park that when dog fouling is on the increase, quite rightly the public expect us to act. If I move down towards paragraph 1.2 in the paper, the Antisocial Behaviour Act and Policing Act of 2014 introduced public space protection orders which tidied up some of the existing legislation. And indeed, you will be aware that we have a public space protection order already in place for car cruising in Netherfield. And the administration of that is done by ourselves in public protection. This paper seeks to introduce a consultation for a public space protection order for the whole borough. The legislation that we have that allows us to issue fixed penalties comes to a close, and we need really to have a public space protection order in place following consultation by the end of October. Our approach is in line with other districts and boroughs up and down the country that suffer this problem, and we're keen to go out to the public through the consultation process that's described in the paper. There's public space protection orders in terms of the fine. The penalty notice can be up to £100, and we are proposing that for the order to be in place in Gedling, that we go for that higher limit. So currently the fixed penalty notice is for £50, but we feel that £100 is consistent with the car cruising PPO requirement that we have approval for. And indeed, £100 just about covers the cost of administering the process, because it's not straightforward. If there is then a court process that needs to follow, there's report writing, there's preparation. But we feel that as a fee, which is in line again with other authorities, allows us to recover costs and sends a message out that it's unacceptable. In terms of, if I just move you on to page 22 of the report, what I'm seeking approval is to go out for consultation, and then the recommendations at the front of the page, leader, allow then myself with the portfolio holder to put the scheme in place following consultation. Happy to take questions, but I think knowing that you'll have read the paper, probably can pause at that point, leader.
Thank you. Thanks, David. I see Viv there and David after. Yeah.
Thank you.
Viv and then David.
Okay, David, just wondering about if a child's in possession of a dog, what happens then?
In terms of the age limit for the fixed penalties?
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to check. Viv, I'll have to check. Yes, I'll have to check, but I don't think there is a limit for the age limit for fixed penalties.
Right. I
can answer that question. I'll check afterwards.
Yeah, it'd be useful to know. I mean, clearly the important thing is around the equalities implications in terms of disability and guide dogs, etc. I mean, I know it's a long shot, isn't it? I'd like to think as a borough we could try and be a bit more preventative, and so have places where we put dog bags, by bins or something that people could take if they didn't have any bags. I know our twinning town of Vendée, interestingly, in France does this as a way of trying to be more preventative.
Yes.
But, even if you put it in the park areas by the park bins, if it will be abused, I don't know, would it be used? But, I feel we should be doing that as well. So
yes, I mean, I can certainly in places like Gedling Country Park, the cafe have in the past, as have the wardens, we've put them out, we've put bags available.
Right, yeah.
The people that we prosecute are the people that, when we've seen and witnessed it, are people that have just absolutely just had no regard to the law.
Yeah.
So they've let the cars out, let the dogs out of the car, let them run off.
Yeah.
They're not collected afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm totally with you on that.
And there's this discretion always with all of these things. So, if somebody was out with a guide dog and there was a requirement to clean up after it, and that was missed, that would never yield a fixed penalty to that person in those circumstances, would it? The wardens always have discretion, as they do with every aspect of the law.
It's just the children one. I don't want to get.
Yeah, I'm just checking that for you now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Then Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. I think David set out incomprehensively why we need this report, which basically is tidying up on the legislation. When we've had discussions about this, the suggestion is that what we're doing means that good owners are behaving. So if you remember, we've put additional 50 bins in recently, all of which provide another opportunity for good owners. But it's the bad owners who, for want of a better word, are becoming more devious. So we need the backstop of enforcement, recognising, as Dave said, that it's actually difficult to do the enforcement because the way bad owners are behaving. But it is something we need to address, and I'm fully supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Jenny.
Thank you, and thanks for the report, David. Look forward to the results from the consultation, but I'm pretty sure people will be very supportive of what's in the report. Just sorry, I'm going to point out another typo.
Yes, I'm aware of a very obvious one on line 19 at 1.1.
Yes.
That will be corrected, forgive me.
Thank you.
If that's the one.
Yes, 7 Up, just in front of him, 2018-19.
Yes, that will be speedily amended.
Thank you.
Well read, Jenny. Well read. Anybody else? Yeah, Peter, on mute. You're muted. Peter, you're muted. You're muted.
Tap the screen.
Touch the screen.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Success.
Oh,
I think most people appreciate what we're trying to do with the dog filing, but there is just that minority who causes the problem. And I think if we rely on the officer's report on this, I think we're going to be successful. I think the general public are in favour of what we're trying to do. It's just the minority who's causing the problem. So I think all in all, it's a very good report, and I wish it all well, and I think it'll make a lot of difference to Gedling Borough Council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? There's nobody else showing a hand. Just yeah, David, very welcome this, and also pass our thanks on to what is, as you mentioned earlier in your in your brief introduction to it. It's a very difficult job to do, and very difficult to pin that evidence on somebody as much as you'd like to. So I mean, I keep seeing the prosecutions come forward, so it's showing that we're active there. And as David E says, you know, the majority of the public are law-abiding, and it's these other people that tend to. Do you remember that time a couple of years ago? I think when Rob did that picture up at Mapley Precinct with all the dog poo in bags there.
Yes.
And got on that one. So you know, pass on our thanks, as well as we'll be moving this recommendation. I've moved it, so it needs seconding.
Seconded.
Yeah. Okay, we agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving over to the next item, which is item 6, Director of Organisation Development Democratic Service, Helen. Is there?
Thank you very much, Leader, and good afternoon, members of Cabinet. So this is the annual report updating Cabinet on the complaints received by the Council during the last financial year, which you'll be familiar with, together with the annual letter from the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, which is appended to this report, and you'll see has been slightly changed in terms of formatting compared to previous letters that you've seen from the Ombudsman. So I'll assume members have read the report, but just in terms of highlights, if I may, Leader, you'll note that there has been an increase in the complaints received compared to the previous year, and details of the numbers of complaints per service area is set out in the report at paragraph 1.3. So whilst there has been an increase overall in the number of complaints received, it's important not for us to simply focus on the complaints received, but also look at those that were upheld by the council after consideration of those complaints. So what you'll see is that only 89 out of the 379 complaints were upheld at stage 1, and that's a rate of about 23%. And over the years, as you will be aware, SLT have been having a detailed look on a quarterly basis at complaints, and previously the upheld rate has been in the region of 40 to 50%. What we're actually seeing is that is coming down after a lot of concerted effort by officers. So that's stage 2, but I'll also want to draw your attention to the fact that only 26 of the 290 complaints which were not upheld at stage 1 were taken on to stage 2. And of those 26 complaints, only 10 were upheld. And then if you follow that through to the Ombudsman, you'll see that 8 were considered by the Ombudsman and only 1 was upheld by the Ombudsman. And that was the maladministration decision that was reported in detail to Cabinet in January of this year. So I don't intend to go into any detail. So whilst the top line figure is an increase, I think it's fair to say that overall it's another positive picture for the council in regard to the way that we're dealing with our complaints. And just to remind you, as I say, that SLT consider the individual detail of complaints, and what we're looking at where the complaints have been upheld is to understand what remedial action has been put in place by the service areas to improve customer service, but also importantly to seek to avoid further complaints of the same type. So the recommendation is on page 27, Leader, and the details are simply for Cabinet to note. Again, hopefully a relatively straightforward report, but I'm happy to take any questions if Cabinet has any queries.
Thanks, Helen. Any hands up? No hands up there. So we can move to the recommendation. I mean, that's really incredible. 290 and only 10, and then down to 1. You know, again, it's passing on thanks to the legal side that have to go through all the nitty-bitty things. We only see the papers when they come here, but it must be quite a long and torturous road sometimes dealing with some people who quite rightly are making a complaint, you know, and it's been looked in, and we can say, well, it's had the due diligence of everybody looking at it, including the ombudsperson. So it's you know, as far as I'm concerned, we've done our job, and well done to all staff involved. So I'll move a recommendation. That's on page 27. And seconded.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Agreed.
Agreed.
The final item, which is the forward plan. I don't know, does anybody comment on that? No, we just has to note that, and that's the end of it. Thank you very much. Thanks.